Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Connor Mitchell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, watching the December snow blanket downtown Austin. At 38, he commanded respect in both boardrooms and back alleys, a skill set honed during 8 years as a Navy SEAL before transitioning to private military contracting. His security consulting firm, Titan Defense Solutions, had grown from a one-man operation to a multi-million-dollar enterprise in just 5 years. The nickname, The Cleaner, had followed him from the teams to civilian life. When problems needed to disappear completely, whether insurgent cells in Kandahar or corporate espionage in corporate America, Connor made them vanish without a trace. Clean, efficient, permanent. He adjusted his charcoal suit and checked his Omega Seamaster. Diana would be expecting him for their anniversary dinner at the Driscoll Hotel. 7 years of marriage, though lately she'd grown distant. More shopping trips with friends, longer spa weekends, hush phone calls that ended when he entered the room. Connor's assistant, Beverly, knocked and entered. "Mr. Mitchell, your cousin Tyler's here. Says it's urgent." Tyler Hammond shuffled in, his usual nervous energy amplified. At 35, Tyler worked as Connor's operations manager, a position Connor had created more from family loyalty than necessity. Tyler had always lived in Connor's shadow, from high school football to military service that ended after 6 months due to anxiety issues. "Connor, buddy, we need to talk." Tyler's eyes darted around the office. "It's about the Christmas timeline for the Peterson contract." Connor studied his cousin's fidgeting hands, the slight sweat despite the December chill. Tyler was lying. Connor's training had taught him to read micro-expressions, stress indicators, deception tells. Tyler exhibited all three. "The Peterson contract is on schedule," Connor said calmly. "What's really on your mind?" Tyler forced a laugh. "You always were paranoid. Look, I just wanted to make sure everything's perfect for your anniversary. Diana mentioned you're going somewhere special." Connor hadn't told Tyler about dinner plans. Only Diana knew. "Just dinner at the Driscoll," Connor replied, watching Tyler's pupils dilate slightly, another stress indicator. Great. Well, I should head out. Tell Diana I said happy anniversary." After Tyler left, Connor sat in his leather chair, fingers steepled. Something was wrong. His instincts had kept him alive through 3 combat deployments and countless private operations. They were screaming now. He opened his laptop and accessed Titan's internal security system. Every employee's keycard access, computer activity, and phone records were monitored, a necessity in his business. Tyler's activity showed normal patterns until 3 weeks ago, when he'd started accessing Connor's personal calendar and financial files he had no business viewing. Connor's jaw tightened. Family or not, betrayal was betrayal. His phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "Rain check on dinner? Emergency with mom. Love you." Diana's mother had been dead for 2 years. Connor leaned back, his mind shifting into operational mode. 2 lies in one afternoon from the 2 people closest to him. In the field, this would trigger immediate counter-surveillance and threat assessment protocols. He opened his safe and retrieved a small device, a GPS tracker no bigger than a button. His wedding ring felt suddenly heavy as he slipped the tracker into his pocket. Time to find out what his wife and cousin were really up to. Chapter 2. The Discovery. Connor's modified Ford Raptor followed Diana's BMW from a distance as she navigated Austin's evening traffic. The GPS tracker he'd placed on her car 3 days ago had led him to several interesting locations. Tyler's apartment twice, a law office in downtown Austin, and now the parking garage of the Four Seasons Hotel. Through his binoculars, Connor watched Diana emerge from her car wearing the red dress he'd bought her in Milan, the one she claimed was too fancy for anywhere. She checked her phone and walked toward the hotel's rear entrance. Connor's jaw clenched. The Four Seasons was where they'd spent their honeymoon. His earpiece crackled. "Ugh, this is Raven. Target 2 entering building, east side." Rebecca, his sister and business partner, had positioned herself in the hotel's lobby bar. At 34, Becca had inherited the family's military genetics, serving 6 years as Army intelligence before joining Titan. Copy, Raven. I'm moving to observation point 2. Connor entered through the main lobby, his tailored suit and confident bearing marking him as another wealthy guest. He made his way to the mezzanine level overlooking the restaurant. Through the decorative railing, he saw Diana at a corner table. Across from her sat Tyler, but they weren't alone. A third man, tall and silver-haired, faced away from Connor. All three leaned forward in intense conversation, occasionally glancing around the restaurant. Connor activated the parabolic microphone hidden in his watch, a gift from his days working with the CIA. The device could pick up conversations from 50 yards away. Has to happen before Christmas, the silver-haired man was saying. The will reading is December 26th. After that, everything changes. Tyler's voice. But what if he gets suspicious? Connor's not stupid. He knows people. He's not going to suspect his loving wife and trusted cousin, Diana replied coldly. Besides, once the accident happens, it won't matter what he might have figured out. Connor's blood turned to ice. Accident. The silver-haired man turned slightly, revealing his profile. Leonard Vasquez, Diana's divorce attorney. Connor recognized him from background checks he'd run when Diana mentioned needing legal advice about her late mother's estate. The inheritance from his grandfather is worth $47 million, Vasquez continued. Split between you, Diana. It's enough to disappear anywhere. But the window closes after Christmas. The old man's lawyers made that very clear. Connor's mind raced. His grandfather had died 8 months ago, leaving Connor everything. But the will contained a bizarre clause. If Connor died before the first Christmas following his grandfather's death, the inheritance would be split equally between Diana and Tyler as the next closest relatives. At the time, Connor had thought it was just eccentric legal maneuvering. Now he understood it was a death sentence. The plan is already arranged, Tyler said. Connor thinks we're going to Dallas for the Morrison contract review. I've made sure he'll want to pilot himself. You know how he is about control. Diana laughed, a sound that once made Connor's heart race. He always said flying was freedom. Ironic, isn't it? Connor had logged over 2,000 flight hours in military and civilian aircraft. But if someone tampered with his plane, what about the insurance investigation? Diana asked. Pilot error, Vasquez replied smoothly. Bad weather, mechanical failure. These things happen. I have contacts in the FAA who owe me favors. Connor closed his eyes, feeling the familiar calm that descended before combat operations. His grandfather had always said Connor was too trusting with family. The old man had been right. His earpiece crackled again. Uck, we have movement. Target 2 is heading to the ladies' room. Connor stood and moved toward the stairs. When Diana emerged from the restroom, she nearly collided with him. Connor, her face went white. What are you doing here? Business meeting ran late. Thought I'd grab a drink before heading home. He smiled, the same easy grin that had charmed her 7 years ago. What about your mom's emergency? Diana's recovery was smooth, but not perfect. Connor caught the micro-hesitation, the slight uptick in her breathing. False alarm. She's fine. I was just meeting Tyler about Christmas plans. Another lie. How thoughtful of you both. Connor kissed her cheek, catching the scent of expensive perfume, not the one he'd bought her. I'll see you at home. As he walked away, Connor activated his phone's recording app. Time to gather evidence. Not for the police. They'd never understand the nuances of what he was planning. This was personal now. And when things became personal, the cleaner came out to play. Chapter 3. The Sister's Warning. Connor's home office resembled a scaled-down version of a military command center. Multiple monitors displayed security feeds, financial data, and communication intercepts. Rebecca sat across from his desk, her laptop open to surveillance footage from the Four Seasons. I ran facial recognition on the attorney, she said, turning her screen toward Connor. Leonard Vasquez. Divorced 3 times, 2 DUI arrests, gambling problem. He's drowning in debt from bad investments. Connor studied Vasquez's financial records. The man owed 6 figures to some very unfriendly people in Las Vegas. Desperate men made dangerous allies. What about Tyler's recent activities? Rebecca pulled up another file. He's been liquidating assets quietly. Sold his watch collection, emptied his savings account, transferred everything to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Classic preparation for disappearing. And Diana, your wife's been busy. Rebecca's voice carried an edge of disgust. 3 separate meetings with divorce attorneys in the past month. She's also been researching life insurance policies and inheritance law. But here's the interesting part. She's been using a burner phone for most of these communications. Connor leaned back in his chair. The tactical picture was becoming clear. This wasn't a spontaneous betrayal born of passion or opportunity. This was a calculated, long-term operation. His phone buzzed. Diana, texting from upstairs. Working late again? Come to bed soon. Red heart. Connor showed Rebecca the message. She made a disgusted sound. 8 months, Connor said quietly. They've been planning this since grandfather's funeral. The timeline makes sense, Rebecca agreed. Diana started acting strange right after the will reading. I thought she was just grieving. Connor remembered that day clearly. The family had gathered in his grandfather's study as the lawyer read the will. When Connor inherited everything, Diana had seemed shocked, almost upset. Tyler had looked sick. Now Connor understood why. There's something else, Rebecca said, her voice careful. I traced Diana's phone records. She's been in contact with someone else. Calls to a number registered to a company called Apex Logistics. Connor's blood chilled. Apex Logistics was a front company used by mercenaries and private military contractors. The kind of people who solve problems with violence for the right price. They're not just planning an accident, he realized. They're hiring professionals. Rebecca nodded grimly. The call started 2 weeks ago. Short conversations, always encrypted, but I managed to trace the company back to Magnus Kellerman. Connor knew that name. Kellerman ran a network of former special operations soldiers who'd gone private sector. They specialized in making wealthy people's problems disappear permanently. How much time do we have? The Dallas trip is scheduled for tomorrow. Tyler's already filed the flight plan. Connor stood and walked to his safe, withdrawing a tactical vest and shoulder holster. Inside the holster sat his Sig Sauer P320, a weapon that had served him well in darker places. What's the plan? Rebecca asked. First, we document everything. Full evidence package, recordings, financial transfers, communication logs. Insurance in case something happens to us. And then, Connor's smile was cold and predatory. Then we give them exactly what they want. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. They want Connor Mitchell to disappear, he explained. So Connor Mitchell will disappear. But the cleaner's going to pay them a visit. As if summoned by his words, Diana appeared in the doorway wearing a silk nightgown. Her timing was too perfect, her smile too bright. Still working, baby? You'll burn yourself out. She glanced at Rebecca with carefully concealed irritation. Becca, it's pretty late. Just finishing up, Rebecca replied smoothly, closing her laptop. Early flight tomorrow, right, Connor? 7 a.m., Connor confirmed. Tyler and I have that client meeting in Dallas. Diana's eyes lit up with genuine pleasure, the first authentic emotion Connor had seen from her in months. Well, don't work too late, she said, kissing Connor's cheek. Big day tomorrow. After Diana left, Rebecca shook her head. She's actually excited about murdering you. Connor checked his weapon and slipped it into the holster. She's about to learn why you should never betray someone called the cleaner. The real operation was about to begin. Chapter 4. The Hunt Begins. Connor's hangar sat on the outskirts of Austin Bergstrom International Airport, housing his pride and joy, a Cirrus SR-22 that had cost him nearly $1 million. He arrived before dawn, ostensibly for pre-flight checks, but actually to inspect his aircraft for sabotage. Using a tactical flashlight, he methodically examined every inch of the plane. What he found made his jaw clench with rage. Someone had tampered with the fuel mixture control and loosened bolts on the elevator control cables. In flight, the sabotage would cause engine failure followed by loss of control. The crash would look like pilot error, exactly as Vasquez had described. Tyler arrived 20 minutes later, coffee in hand and an Oscar-worthy performance of casual concern. Ready for Dallas, cuz? Tyler's smile never quite reached his eyes. Just finishing the pre-flight, Connor replied. Want to grab breakfast before we take off? Actually, I already ate. Let's get going. Traffic was murder getting here. Connor pretended to study his checklist while watching Tyler in his peripheral vision. His cousin kept glancing at his phone, occasionally typing quick messages, probably updating Diana and Vasquez on the timeline. Looks like weather might be an issue, Connor said, pointing to cloud formations on the horizon. Might want to file an alternate flight plan. Tyler's face went pale. I thought you said the weather was perfect. Weather changes, cuz. That's why pilots stay flexible. For the next hour, Connor deliberately delayed their departure with various safety concerns and mechanical checks. Each delay sent Tyler deeper into nervous panic. The man was sweating despite the December cold. Finally, Connor made his move. You know what, Tyler? I'm not comfortable with this weather. Let's postpone until tomorrow. What? Tyler's voice cracked. But the client meeting, I'll call Morrison and reschedule. Better safe than sorry. Connor pulled out his phone and pretended to dial while watching Tyler frantically text someone. Within seconds, Tyler's phone rang. It's Diana, Tyler said, answering immediately. Hey, babe, I mean Diana. Yeah, he wants to postpone. I know, but what can I do? Okay. Tyler hung up and forced another smile. Diana says she needs to talk to you about Christmas plans. She's at the office. Connor nodded, but instead of heading home, he drove to a storage unit across town. Inside, behind stacks of seemingly random boxes, sat his real command center. Military-grade communication equipment, surveillance gear, and weapons that weren't exactly legal for civilian ownership. Rebecca was already there, surrounded by laptops and monitoring equipment. They're panicking, she reported. Diana's made 6 calls in the last hour. 3 to Vasquez, 2 to the Apex Logistics number, and 1 to a number registered to a Magnus Kellerman himself. What did you hear? Diana's pushing for immediate action. She told Vasquez that waiting longer increases the risk of discovery. Kellerman's people are apparently standing by for a green light. Connor studied the surveillance photos Rebecca had taken. Kellerman's team consisted of 4 men, all former military, all with questionable records after leaving service. They'd been staying at a motel near the airport for 3 days. What's their backup plan? From what I gathered, if the plane's sabotage failed, they were going to stage a home invasion. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Connor's expression darkened. These people weren't just planning to kill him. They were prepared to murder him in his own home, possibly when Diana was present to make her grief look authentic. Time to turn the tables, Connor said, opening a weapons case. But first, we need to make sure Diana and Tyler commit fully to their plan. He pulled out a small device that looked like a smartphone. Remember the training exercise in Syria? The one where we convinced that arms dealer to walk into our kill zone. Rebecca's eyes lit up with understanding. You're going to make them think they succeeded. Better than that. I'm going to make them think they killed me, then watch them celebrate. When they're completely exposed and confident, that's when the cleaner strikes. Connor began assembling his gear. Call Morrison's office and have them confirm that Tyler and I died in a plane crash somewhere over East Texas. Make sure the story reaches the local news. And then, Connor's smile was predatory. Then we see how long it takes Diana to start spending my money. The hunt was about to begin in earnest. Chapter 5, The Trap Springs. At 3:47 p.m., local news stations across Texas reported a tragic plane crash. A Cirrus SR-22 registered to Connor Mitchell had disappeared from radar over East Texas. Search and rescue operations were underway, but weather conditions made immediate recovery unlikely. Connor watched the broadcast from his command center, noting how quickly the story gained traction. Someone had made sure the media was primed for this particular tragedy. His phone exploded with calls and messages, friends, clients, business associates expressing shock and concern. Connor ignored them all, focusing instead on the 3 conversations Rebecca was monitoring in real time. Diana's first call was to Vasquez, her voice shaking with what sounded like genuine grief. Leonard, oh my God, Connor's plane went down. They're saying there might not be survivors. But her second call, 30 minutes later to Tyler, revealed her true nature. "Is it over? Are you sure they won't find anything?" Tyler's response chilled Connor's blood. Kellerman's people confirmed the crash. They tracked the plane until it went down. No survivors possible from that altitude. That confirmed Connor's worst suspicions. Kellerman's team hadn't just sabotaged the plane. They'd been tracking it to ensure the job was completed. Rebecca handed Connor a headset as Diana placed her third call. "Mr. Kellerman? This is Diana Mitchell." "Yes, I'm sorry for your loss, too." "What do you mean payment arrangements?" "But we agreed the payment was contingent on results." "I see." "Yes, I'll have Tyler transfer the funds tonight." Connor raised an eyebrow. Even in death, he was learning new things about his wife. She was negotiating payment for his own murder. "How much?" Rebecca whispered. Connor held up 5 fingers, then a 0. $500,000. His life had a price tag. By evening, Connor had a complete picture of their operation. Diana and Tyler had transferred $2 million to various accounts. Payment for Kellerman's team, Vasquez's legal services, and what appeared to be bribes to FAA officials who would certify the crash as pilot error. The most revealing conversation came at 9 p.m., when Diana called Tyler from what she thought was the privacy of her home. "I can't believe we actually did it," she said, her voice giddy with relief and excitement. "I know. I keep expecting Connor to walk through the door," Tyler replied. "Well, he won't. That bastard got exactly what he deserved." Connor's hands tightened into fists. That bastard. Her husband of 7 years was just a bastard who deserved to die. "When do we file the insurance claims?" Tyler asked. "Vasquez says to wait a week. Let the investigation conclude, then we move on the life insurance and the inheritance. Once the will is probated, we split $47 million. "What about Rebecca?" Diana's laugh was cold. "What about her? She's not family by blood. The will is very specific, spouses and blood relatives only. Rebecca gets nothing." That was it. Connor had heard enough. He stood and began loading magazines for his weapons. Tactical gear went into a duffel bag, along with zip ties, duct tape, and other tools of his former trade. "Rebecca, I need you to stay here and monitor communications. If this goes wrong—" "It won't," she interrupted. "But Connor, what exactly are you planning?" Connor's expression was granite hard. "I'm going to give Diana and Tyler exactly what they gave me. But first, they're going to confess everything. Every detail, every conspiracy, every moment they thought about murdering me. And then the cleaner completes the job." Connor checked his watch. 11:30 p.m. Diana would be asleep, probably dreaming of her $47 million. Tyler would be at his apartment, likely celebrating with expensive whiskey. Time to remind them both that some people were very hard to kill. Chapter 6. Confessions in the Dark. Connor's approach to Tyler's apartment building was textbook special operations. Silent, methodical, invisible. He'd memorized the building's layout weeks ago during his surveillance, identified security cameras and blind spots, and noted the location of Tyler's unit on the 3rd floor. The lock on Tyler's door yielded to Connor's bump key in under 10 seconds. Inside, he found Tyler exactly where he'd expected, passed out drunk on his couch, an empty bottle of Macallan 25 on the coffee table beside printouts of bank transfer confirmations. Connor zip-tied Tyler's hands and feet before placing a strip of duct tape over his mouth. When Tyler's eyes fluttered open, Connor was sitting across from him in a chair, his Sig Sauer resting casually on his knee. Tyler's scream was muffled by the tape, his eyes wide with terror as he struggled against the restraints. "Afternoon, cousin," Connor said calmly. "Sorry I'm late. Plain trouble." Tyler thrashed violently, making muffled sounds of panic and disbelief. "I know what you're thinking. How am I alive? Simple. I never got on the plane." Connor held up a small device. Remote control. Amazing what military technology can do these days. "I flew that plane right into the ground from my truck." Connor leaned forward. "But before we discuss your immediate future, I want you to understand exactly how thoroughly you've failed." He produced Tyler's laptop, which displayed bank transfer records. "Kellerman's team? They work for me now. Have for 3 years. Magnus owes me a favor from our contracting days. When he told me what you and Diana were planning, I asked him to play along. Tyler's face went white as Connor continued. The $500,000 you paid them? They'll be returning it to my accounts, minus a consultation fee. The FAA officials you bribed? Also my contacts. The crash investigation will conclude that no one was on board when the plane went down. Connor removed the duct tape from Tyler's mouth. Connor, please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Connor's voice was ice. You conspired with my wife to murder me for money. You sabotaged my plane. You hired killers. You celebrated my death. Diana made me do it. She said you were planning to divorce her, leave her with nothing. She said it was self-defense. Connor almost laughed. Diana told you I was planning to divorce her? She had papers, legal documents showing you were going to cut her off completely. Tyler, I was never planning to divorce Diana. Those papers were probably forgeries created by Vasquez to manipulate you. Connor shook his head. You were so eager to believe I was the villain that you never questioned her story. The truth hit Tyler like a physical blow. His face crumpled as he realized he'd been played. Now, Connor continued, you're going to tell me everything. Every conversation, every plan, every detail of how you conspired to murder me. And you're going to do it on camera. Connor set up a video camera and recording equipment. For the next 2 hours, Tyler confessed everything. Dates, amounts, conversations, methods. He detailed how Diana had approached him months ago, how she'd gradually convinced him that Connor was their enemy, how she'd promised him millions if he helped eliminate Connor. She said we'd be partners, Tyler sobbed. That after you were gone, she'd need someone she could trust. Did you really think Diana was going to share $47 million with you? Connor asked. Tyler's silence was answer enough. When the confession was complete, Connor reviewed the footage. Tyler had admitted to conspiracy to commit murder, sabotage, and fraud. More than enough to put him away for life. What happens now? Tyler whispered. Connor stood and holstered his weapon. Now you disappear. You're going to kill me? Tyler, killing you would be a mercy. You're going to live with what you've done. But you're going to live somewhere very far away, with people who don't appreciate betrayal. Connor made a phone call. Within an hour, 2 men arrived, former colleagues from Connor's contracting days. They bundled Tyler into a van without a word. Where are you taking him? Tyler screamed as they dragged him away. Afghanistan, Connor replied. There's a warlord there who needs someone to test his minefields. Congratulations, cousin. You just volunteered. As the van disappeared into the night, Connor felt a cold satisfaction. Tyler's fate was sealed. Now, it was Diana's turn. But Diana's punishment would be far more creative than Tyler's exile. Diana had betrayed not just Connor, but their marriage, their vows, their life together. For that, she deserved something special. Connor drove toward home, where his loving wife was probably still mourning his tragic death. Time to give her the surprise of her life. Chapter 7. The Widow's Grief. Diana's performance as the grieving widow was Academy Award-worthy. When Connor observed her through the home security cameras he'd never told her about, she played the part perfectly. Tissue box beside her, red-rimmed eyes, black dress that suggested mourning while accentuating her figure. The funeral was scheduled for Friday, 3 days away. Diana had thrown herself into the planning with what appeared to be desperate grief, but was actually careful stage management. She'd selected an expensive casket, premium burial plot, and catering that would cost more than most people's annual salary. All paid for with Connor's money, naturally. From his command center, Connor monitored Diana's every move. She'd been busy in his absence, meeting with Vasquez to begin probate proceedings, contacting insurance companies about the life insurance policies, and making preliminary inquiries about selling the house. Most interesting was the call she'd placed to a real estate agent about properties in Monaco. I'm thinking of relocating, Diana had said. Somewhere warm. Somewhere I can start fresh after my loss. Connor smiled grimly. Diana was planning to disappear with his money to a country with no extradition treaty. Smart, but not smart enough. Rebecca entered the command center carrying coffee and a folder of documents. Tyler's confession is uploaded to secure servers in 3 countries, she reported. If anything happens to us, Automatic triggers will send copies to the FBI, IRS, and local authorities. Good. What about Diana's activities? She's been in contact with someone interesting. Ever heard of Julian Reeves? Connor's blood chilled. Julian Reeves was Diana's ex-boyfriend from college, the one she claimed to have lost touch with years ago. He was also a convicted felon who'd served time for fraud and identity theft. How long have they been in contact? Best I can tell, about a year. Maybe longer. The communications are encrypted, but I managed to crack some of them. Rebecca handed Connor a printout. Julian's in Monaco. He's been setting up offshore accounts and fake identities. Connor read the communications, his anger building with each line. Diana hadn't just been planning to kill him for the inheritance. She'd been planning to disappear with her ex-boyfriend using Connor's money. There's more, Rebecca continued. Julian's criminal history includes something interesting. 3 years ago, he was suspected but never charged in the death of a wealthy widow in Miami. She'd recently changed her will to leave him everything, then died in a suspicious car accident. He's done this before. Looks like it. Diana isn't his first mark, and you probably wouldn't have been his last. Connor studied surveillance photos of Julian, tall, handsome in a sleazy way, the kind of man who specialized in charming wealthy women. Diana had traded her husband for a professional predator. What's the timeline? Based on their communications, Diana plans to leave the country immediately after the will is probated. The inheritance should clear within 2 weeks of the funeral. Connor checked his watch. The funeral was in 18 hours. Time to make his final preparations. Rebecca, I need you to handle the technical side. Make sure all evidence packages are ready for distribution. If this goes wrong, it won't go wrong, she interrupted. But Connor, what exactly are you planning for Diana? Connor's smile was utterly without warmth. I'm going to give her everything she wants. The inheritance, the insurance money, even Julian. But first, she's going to learn what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trust. He opened a weapons case and began assembling specialized equipment. Not for killing, but for something much more creative. Diana thinks she's a black widow, Connor said. Time to introduce her to a real predator. Chapter 8. The Resurrection. Connor's funeral was a masterpiece of theater. Diana sat in the front row of St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, dabbing her eyes with a black handkerchief as the pastor delivered a eulogy about Connor's service to his country and dedication to his family. The church was packed. Connor's military friends, business associates, and clients had come to pay their respects. Many of them approached Diana afterward, offering condolences and support during her difficult time. Diana played the role perfectly, accepting sympathy with grace and dignity while occasionally breaking down with grief that seemed utterly authentic. From his position in the church balcony, disguised with a beard and glasses, Connor watched his own funeral with clinical detachment. Diana's performance was flawless, but he caught the moments when she checked her phone, the quick glances at her watch, the subtle signs that she was eager for this charade to end. After the service, the procession moved to Oakwood Cemetery, where a mahogany casket was lowered into the ground while Diana threw dirt on top with trembling hands. Connor followed at a distance, noting which attendees were genuine mourners and which were merely curious onlookers. When the ceremony concluded, he watched Diana accept final condolences before being driven home by Rebecca, who was also playing her role as the grieving sister-in-law. That evening, Connor positioned himself in his home's hidden observation room, a space behind a master bedroom that Diana had never discovered. Through one-way mirrors, he watched his widow's true colors emerge. The moment Rebecca left, Diana's grief vanished like a discarded costume. She poured herself a glass of Connor's most expensive wine, kicked off her funeral heels, and called Julian Reeves. "It's done," she said, her voice light with relief. "The bastard is finally in the ground." Julian's voice came through clearly on the speakerphone. "Any problems?" "None. Everyone bought the grieving widow act completely. Even Rebecca seems to believe I actually loved her brother." "When do you fly out?" "Day after tomorrow. The lawyers say the will should be probated within 10 days. Once the money clears, I'll transfer everything to our Monaco accounts." "What about the insurance money?" Diana laughed. a sound that no longer held any beauty for Connor. $20 million in life insurance. They'll have to pay out once the death certificate is filed. And if anyone gets suspicious, who's going to be suspicious? Tyler's disappeared, probably on some bender somewhere. Rebecca inherits nothing, so she has no standing to challenge anything. I'm the grieving widow with ironclad documentation. Connor had heard enough. He activated a remote control device, and every light in the house went out. Julian? Julian, are you there? Diana's voice carried a note of panic as the call dropped. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the house in an eerie red glow. Connor's voice came through the home's intercom system, electronically disguised but unmistakably his. Hello, Diana. Diana screamed, dropping her wine glass. Who is this? How did you get in here? I never left, darling wife. Diana ran to the front door, but the electronic locks had engaged. She tried the windows, also locked by the home's security system. Connor, her voice was a whisper. That's impossible. You're dead. I saw them bury you. You saw them bury an empty casket. Connor's voice replied through the speakers. Did you really think the cleaner would be taken down by sabotaged aircraft and hired killers? Diana collapsed into a chair, her face white with terror. This isn't real. This is some kind of breakdown. Grief hallucination. Check your phone, Diana. Diana's phone buzzed with a text message containing a video file. When she opened it, she saw Tyler's confession, every detail of their conspiracy, every payment, every plan. Tyler told me everything. Connor's voice continued. About Vasquez, about Kellerman's team, about your boyfriend Julian. Did you really think a convicted felon was going to share $47 million with you? Connor, please, you don't understand. I can explain. No explanations necessary. I heard everything, Diana. Every phone call, every plan, every moment you celebrated my death. Diana began sobbing, genuine tears this time, born of terror rather than grief. What do you want? Justice, Connor replied. And I'm going to get it. The lights came back on, but Diana was no longer alone in the room. Connor stood behind her, very much alive, wearing tactical gear and holding documentation that would destroy her life. Hello, wife, he said quietly. We need to talk. Chapter 9. The Cleaner's Justice. Diana tried to run, but Connor caught her wrist with the casual ease of a man trained to subdue enemies. He guided her back to the chair, where she sat trembling as he spread documents across the coffee table. Let's review your situation, Connor said calmly. You conspired to murder me. You committed fraud with the insurance companies. You sabotaged my aircraft. You hired professional killers. Any one of these crimes carries a life sentence. Diana's lawyer instincts kicked in through her terror. You can't prove any of that. Tyler's gone, and his confession was obtained under duress. Tyler's confession is just the beginning, Connor interrupted. He activated a tablet showing surveillance footage. I have video of you meeting with Vasquez. Audio recordings of your phone calls with Julian. Bank records showing the payments to Kellerman's team. Your own voice celebrating my death. Diana watched the evidence stack against her, her face growing paler with each revelation. But here's what interests me most, Connor continued, producing another document. Your communications with Julian Reeves go back 14 months. Diana said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. The inheritance was just convenient timing. You would have found another way to get rid of me eventually. Connor's voice was eerily calm. You married me for my money, stayed with me for my money, and tried to kill me for my money. Connor, please. I'm not finished. Connor pulled out a chair and sat across from her, close enough that she could see the controlled fury in his eyes. You want to know what hurts most? It's not the betrayal. It's not even the murder attempt. It's that you made me doubt myself. Diana looked confused. For months, I thought I was losing my mind. You were distant, cold, lying about everything. I thought maybe I'd become someone unlovable. Maybe I'd failed as a husband. Connor's voice grew quieter, more dangerous. You made me think I was the problem. Diana finally found her voice. You were never home, always working, always focused on business. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. So you decided to murder me instead of divorcing me. The prenup. would have left you with $5 million. More than most people see in a lifetime. But it wasn't enough, was it? You wanted everything. Diana's composure finally cracked completely. Yes, I wanted everything. I deserved everything. Do you know what it's like being married to someone everyone calls the cleaner? Living with someone who kills people for a living. I stopped taking military contracts 3 years ago. But you still have that look in your eyes. Like you're always calculating how to eliminate threats. It's terrifying. Connor stared at her for a long moment. You're right. I do have that look. And right now, Diana, you're definitely a threat. Diana's eyes widened as Connor stood and walked to a wall safe she'd never known existed. Inside were documents, cash, and several items that definitely weren't legal for civilian ownership. Here's what's going to happen, Connor said, returning with a thick envelope. You have 2 choices. He placed a passport on the table, one with Diana's photo, but a different name. Choice 1. You take this passport and $50,000. You get on a plane tonight and disappear forever. You never contact Julian, never access any of our joint accounts, never set foot in Texas again. You become someone else and build a new life far away from here. Diana stared at the passport. And choice 2. Connor placed a second document on the table, a confession letter already written in Diana's handwriting, courtesy of samples Connor had collected over the years. Choice 2. The FBI receives a complete evidence package documenting your conspiracy to commit murder, along with this signed confession. You spend the rest of your life in federal prison, where I'm told life expectancy is quite short for people who try to kill military veterans. Diana picked up the confession, reading her own handwriting, confessing to crimes she'd actually committed. How did you? I've been planning this conversation for weeks, Diana. I know how you form your letters, how you phrase sentences, how you think. Creating a convincing forgery wasn't difficult. Diana looked between the passport and the confession. If I take the passport, what guarantee do I have that you won't come after me later? None, Connor replied honestly. But consider the alternative. Prison, followed by whatever accidents might befall someone who tried to kill the cleaner. Diana's hand shook as she reached for the passport. The $50,000 won't last long. Then you'll need to find work. I'm told waitressing and retail pay reasonably well. Connor's smile was without mercy. Consider a motivation to develop skills beyond manipulating men. Diana stood on unsteady legs. I need to pack. No. You leave with what you're wearing and the money I'm giving you. Everything else stays here. Your jewelry, your clothes, your car, all purchased with my money. Connor, please. You have 10 minutes to make your choice, Diana. After that, the confession goes to the FBI. Diana looked around the house that had been her home for 7 years, at the life she was about to lose forever. Then she looked at Connor's face and saw no mercy, no forgiveness, no possibility of negotiation. She picked up the passport and money. I hate you, she whispered. I know, Connor replied. But you'll be alive to hate me, which is more than you planned to give me. Connor walked Diana to the door, where a car was waiting. Not a taxi. One of Connor's associates who would ensure Diana reached the airport and boarded her flight. As the car pulled away, Rebecca emerged from the shadows. Think she'll stay disappeared? Connor watched the taillights vanish into the night. She's a survivor. She'll adapt. And if she doesn't, Connor's smile was cold and final. Then she'll learn why they call me the cleaner. 3 months later, Connor received a postcard from Prague. No message, just a picture of the city skyline. He recognized Diana's handwriting in the address. She was alive, building a new life far from Texas. Connor hoped she'd learned something from their encounter, though he doubted it. People like Diana rarely changed. Tyler, meanwhile, had lasted 6 weeks in Afghanistan before a landmine ended his particular story. Connor felt no satisfaction in his cousin's death, just the cold completion of a necessary task. The inheritance from his grandfather remained untouched in Connor's accounts. $47 million that had cost so many people so much. Connor donated half of it to veteran charities and used the rest to expand Titan Defense Solutions. He never remarried. Trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to rebuild. But sometimes, late at night in his home office, Connor would pour himself a glass of his grandfather's bourbon and reflect on a lesson he'd learned. Family wasn't about blood or marriage vows. Family was about loyalty, trust, and standing together against the world. Rebecca understood that. She'd proven it when she helped him survive Diana's betrayal. Diana and Tyler had forgotten it and paid the price. The cleaner's work was complete. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Perfect Facade. Harvey Hawley had built his life on precision and control. At 34, he was a senior aerospace engineer at North Star Dynamics, designing navigation systems for commercial satellites, work that required mathematical exactness and an ability to see patterns others missed. His colleagues often joked that Harvey could calculate trajectories in his sleep, but what they didn't know was that he applied the same analytical mind to everything. Finances, relationships, problems. He'd met Miranda Ford during his graduate program at MIT. She was studying marketing, vivacious and charming, the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking into it. Harvey, more reserved and calculating, found himself drawn to her spontaneity. She was everything he wasn't: impulsive, emotional, social. For 3 years of dating and 5 years of marriage, he convinced himself they balanced each other out. Their daughter, Hope Hoffman Hawley, named after Miranda's late grandmother, had arrived 6 years ago, turning their Boston brownstone into something that felt like a real home. Harvey threw himself into fatherhood with the same dedication he applied to everything else. He learned to braid hair from YouTube videos, memorized every princess movie, and turned bedtime into an elaborate ritual of stories he invented himself, featuring a brave princess named Hope who solved problems with cleverness rather than magic. But over the past 18 months, Harvey had noticed the patterns shifting. Miranda's phone, once carelessly left on counters, now went everywhere with her. She'd started going to the gym 5 days a week, admirable, except she never seemed to actually work out. Her body hadn't changed, but her wardrobe had. Expensive lingerie appeared in drawers, pieces Harvey never saw her wear at home. She'd come home smelling of cologne that wasn't his, with explanations about happy hours with the marketing team that became more frequent and elaborate. Harvey didn't confront her. Instead, he did what he did best. He gathered data. He noticed the Wednesday afternoon client meetings that weren't on her work calendar. He saw the deleted call logs, recovered them from the cell phone bill. He found the credit card statements showing hotel rooms in Boston when she was supposedly at conferences in New York. A restaurant in the North End charged to their joint account on their anniversary, while Harvey had been home with Hope, and Miranda claimed to be working late. The pattern was unmistakable. Miranda was having an affair. What Harvey couldn't quite figure out was with whom. The phone number that appeared most frequently on the bills was registered to a Jeremy Sullivan, but a quick search revealed nothing useful: common name, no obvious connection to Miranda's social or professional circles. Then, 3 weeks before Christmas, Harvey found the second phone. He'd been looking for Hope's missing tablet stylus in Miranda's car when he discovered it wedged beneath the driver's seat, a cheap burner smartphone, the kind people used when they didn't want to be traced. Harvey's hands had trembled slightly as he powered it on a rare break in his usual composure. The messages painted a vivid picture. Miranda and someone named Jay had been involved for nearly 14 months. The explicit photos made Harvey's stomach turn. But what cut deeper were the messages about him. Harvey suspects nothing. He's too buried in his satellite calculations to notice what's happening on Earth. He's so boring, Jay. Last night he spent an hour explaining orbital mechanics to Hope, our SIXYEAROLD. I can't wait until this is over. You, me, and the money will finally be free. The money. Harvey had felt his analytical mind kick into overdrive, pushing aside the emotion. What money? He began auditing their finances with forensic precision. What he discovered made his blood run cold. Over the past year, Miranda had systematically drained their joint savings nearly $87,000, funneling it into an account Harvey didn't have access to. She'd taken out a home equity line of credit against the brownstone without his knowledge, forging his signature, pulling another $120,000. Their retirement accounts, once healthy, had been liquidated with early withdrawal penalties she'd somehow hidden from him. Miranda wasn't just having an affair. She was planning to leave him destitute. Harvey sat in his home office that December night, the burner phone on the desk beside him, and felt something cold and calculating settle into his chest. He'd spent 8 years loving this woman, building a life with her, trusting her with everything. He'd given her his loyalty, his finances, his daughter's well-being, and she turned it all into a weapon against him. The question wasn't whether to fight back. Harvey Hawley had spent his career solving impossible problems, finding elegant solutions to complex equations. This was just another problem to solve. The question was how to make the solution permanent. Chapter 2. The Lawyer and the Evidence. Harvey's attorney, Benjamin Bliss, had a reputation for being ruthless in divorce proceedings. A former prosecutor turned family law specialist, Benjamin had seen every trick, every manipulation, every dirty tactic spouses could deploy against each other. His office in downtown Boston reflected his personality. Sharp, efficient, no wasted space. "You did the right thing making copies before confronting her," Benjamin said, reviewing the documents Harvey had brought. The burner phone, still powered on, sat between them like evidence at a trial. "Though I wish you'd come to me before she knew you were onto her." "I haven't confronted her," Harvey said calmly. "She doesn't know I know." Benjamin's eyebrows rose. "You've been sitting on this for how long?" 2 weeks. "Since I found the phone. And you haven't said anything?" Most people would have exploded by now. Harvey's expression didn't change. Emotion clouds judgment. "I needed to understand the full scope before taking action. I still don't know who Jay is. The number on the burner doesn't match the number I found on our cell bills. She's using at least 2 different methods of communication." Benjamin leaned back, studying his client with new appreciation. "You're treating this like one of your engineering problems. Because it is one. Variables, unknowns, desired outcomes. I need to solve for all variables before I act." Harvey pulled out a flash drive. "I've documented everything. Financial transactions with timestamps, screenshots from the burner phone, recordings from our home security system showing her taking documents from my office, her lies about her whereabouts cross-referenced with actual locations from our cell phone GPS data. You've been thorough." "I'm always thorough." Harvey's voice was level, almost cold. "I need to know my options. Full custody, financial recovery, and I want her prosecuted for the forgery on the home equity line." "That's fraud." Benjamin whistled low. "Harvey, I need to be honest with you. Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state. Adultery matters, but it's not the nuclear weapon it used to be. As for custody, judges prefer joint arrangements unless the mother is demonstrably unfit." "Correct, and nothing you've shown me proves that. Adultery doesn't equal bad parenting in the court's eyes." Harvey had expected this. What would prove it? Evidence of neglect, abuse, substance problems, exposing the child to dangerous situations or people. Something that shows she's putting her own interests above the child's welfare in a way that's actively harmful. Harvey filed this information away. And the financial fraud? That's more promising. The forged signature on the HELOC is a crime. We can use that as leverage. Maybe force her into an unfavorable settlement to avoid prosecution. "But Harvey," Benjamin's tone softened slightly. "Is that really what you want? To send your daughter's mother to prison?" "I want her to face consequences for her actions," Harvey said. "Just like anyone else would." What Harvey didn't tell Benjamin was that he'd already started planning 3 moves ahead. The attorney was a piece on the board, useful but limited. Harvey needed more pieces, positioned perfectly, before he could execute the endgame. That night, Harvey did something he'd been planning for days. He created his own anonymous email account and sent a message to himself from Miranda's computer, using her login credentials he'd long ago memorized. The email contained suggestions for hiding assets during divorce proceedings, dated back several months using timestamp manipulation, a trick he'd learned in college that most people didn't know was possible. He'd need this later. Insurance. 2 days before Christmas, Harvey made his next move. He hired a private investigator named Clayton Barton, a former Boston PD detective who specialized in surveillance. Harvey provided the phone numbers, the patterns of behavior, everything he'd compiled. "I need to know who she's seeing," Harvey explained. Full documentation. Photos, video if possible. I need to know if my daughter has ever been exposed to this person. Clayton, a grizzled man in his 50s with sharp eyes, nodded. Most guys in your position want this information to blow up their wife's life. I'm not most guys, Harvey said. I want information because information is power. What I do with it depends on what you find. Fair enough. Give me a week. Harvey gave him 3 days. On December 23rd, Clayton called. You're going to want to see this in person. They met at a coffee shop in Cambridge. Clayton slid a tablet across the table, and Harvey watched the video that would change everything. Miranda, meeting a man outside a hotel in Newton. The man was younger, maybe late 20s, athletic build. They kissed not a friendly peck, but the kiss of people who knew each other's bodies intimately. The man handed Miranda an envelope. She counted cash, then laughed at something he said. That's Jerome Maxwell, Clayton said. Works as a personal trainer at the gym Miranda goes to. Lives in a studio apartment in Alston. Drives a 10-year-old BMW. Has about $15,000 in credit card debt according to my sources. So, she's been paying him, Harvey said quietly. Looks like it. But here's where it gets interesting. Clayton swiped to another video. This was yesterday. Miranda and Jerome in a car, arguing. Harvey couldn't hear the audio, but their body language was unmistakable. Jerome was angry, gesturing wildly. Miranda looked scared. She handed him something in another envelope, and he grabbed her wrist hard enough that she flinched. Harvey felt his jaw tighten. Whatever else Miranda had done, she didn't deserve to be physically intimidated. There's more, Clayton said. I did a deep background. Jerome has a sealed juvenile record, but my source says it was for assault. 2 domestic disturbance calls at previous residences, no charges filed. And he's been photographed going into a known gambling house in Dorchester 3 times in the past month. So, he's in debt, possibly violent. And she's been funding him. Harvey's mind was already racing through the implications. Has Hope ever been around him? Not that I could confirm. Miranda's been careful about that, at least. Harvey felt something loosen slightly in his chest. At least there was that. What do you want me to do with all this? Clayton asked. Harvey looked at the tablet, at the image of Miranda frozen mid-argument with her lover. In that moment, he made his decision. Send everything to my attorney. Every photo, every video, every piece of documentation. And Clayton, I need you to keep watching. Especially around Christmas. I have a feeling things are about to get worse before they get better. Clayton studied him. You're planning something. I'm preparing for multiple contingencies, Harvey corrected. There's a difference. Chapter 3. Christmas morning. Harvey woke at 5:47 a.m. on Christmas morning, precisely 13 minutes before his alarm. Old habits, from his military father Garrett Carlson, a retired Marine colonel who'd taught Harvey that discipline was the foundation of success. The brownstone was quiet. Through the wall, he could hear Hope's soft breathing from her room. She'd insisted on sleeping alone on Christmas Eve, wanting to be brave enough to catch Santa. The thought made Harvey's chest ache. Miranda's side of the bed was cold. She'd come home late the night before, smelling of wine and offering vague explanations about a friend's Christmas party. Harvey had pretended to be asleep, listening as she'd made a phone call in the bathroom, her voice low and urgent. I can't do it tonight. He's right here. Tomorrow morning, I promise. Yes, I'll make it clear. Harvey had lain in the dark, his engineer's mind already calculating the angles, the possibilities, the likely outcomes of whatever Miranda was planning. Now, in the gray dawn light, he went through his morning routine with mechanical precision. Shower, shave, coffee. He'd already positioned his phone to record the living room from the bookshelf, a new security camera he'd installed days ago, disguised as a picture frame. Miranda hadn't noticed. At 6:30, Hope's door burst open. Daddy, it's Christmas. Harvey scooped her up, drinking in her excitement, the pure joy on her face. She had his dark hair and Miranda's green eyes, and in moments like this, she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Let's go see what Santa brought, he said, carrying her downstairs. The living room looked like a magazine spread. Harvey had stayed up late arranging presents, stringing lights, creating the perfect Christmas morning scene. He'd always been the one to handle holidays. Miranda complained that he was too meticulous, but Hope loved it. They were halfway through opening presents when Miranda appeared on the stairs. Harvey felt his instincts prickle. Miranda's expression was wrong, too composed, too calculated. She was wearing makeup at 7 a.m. on Christmas morning, her hair styled, her phone in her hand. "Hope, honey," Miranda said, her voice syrupy sweet. "Can you come here for a minute?" Hope, surrounded by wrapping paper and new toys, looked up. "But Mommy, I'm opening." "Now, Hope." The sharpness in Miranda's tone made Hope flinch. Harvey stood slowly, every sense on alert. Miranda positioned herself in the center of the room, her phone held at an angle. She was recording. "Hope, sweetheart, I need to tell you something." Miranda's voice took on a theatrical quality that made Harvey's stomach drop. "Santa isn't coming anymore. Do you know why?" Hope's face crumpled in confusion. "But he already came. The presents, those are from Daddy." Miranda's smile was cruel. "Santa's not coming because you're the reason Daddy and I are getting divorced. This is your fault. Our family is breaking up because of you." The world seemed to stop. Hope's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then absolute devastation. She began to cry. Not the normal tears of a disappointed child, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from her core. "No, no, no," Hope screamed, her small body shaking. "I'll be good. I promise. Please, Mommy, I'll be so good." She ran to her room, and Harvey heard her door slam, heard her destroying her new toys in her anguish. The sounds of her 6-year-old daughter's world collapsing echoed through the house. Harvey looked at Miranda, who was still recording, a satisfied smirk on her face. "What the hell did you just do?" His voice was quiet, deadly calm. "I'm documenting your emotional abuse," Miranda said smoothly. "How you've turned our daughter against me. How you've created this toxic environment. This will play very well in court." Harvey understood then. This was Miranda's play to provoke him into a reaction, to paint him as the unstable one while she played the victim. She'd broken their daughter's heart on camera, planning to edit it later, to frame it as his fault. But Miranda had made one critical mistake. She didn't know about Harvey's hidden cameras. "Get out," Harvey said quietly. "This is my house too." I said get out. Go to your lover's apartment. Go anywhere. But you're not staying here while our daughter is upstairs sobbing because you told her she destroyed our family. Miranda's mask slipped for just a second, surprise flickering across her face. She hadn't expected him to know. "I don't know what you're talking about." Harvey pulled out his phone and played a 10-second clip. Miranda and Jerome kissing outside the hotel, her hand on his chest, his hand on her waist. Miranda's face went white. "You have two choices," Harvey said, his voice still eerily calm. "You can leave now, voluntarily, and we can handle this like adults. Or, I can call the police and report that you just emotionally abused our daughter, and we can see how that plays in court when they see the full video. You're recording. Everything. Always. You should know that about me by now, Miranda. I'm thorough." They stared at each other, years of marriage crystallizing into this single moment of absolute understanding. Miranda saw that she'd miscalculated. Harvey saw that his wife was even worse than he'd imagined. "This isn't over," Miranda hissed, grabbing her purse. "No," Harvey agreed. "It's just beginning." As the door slammed behind her, Harvey stood in his destroyed living room, wrapping paper and broken toys scattered around him, his daughter's sobs still echoing from upstairs. He pulled out his phone and did 3 things in rapid succession. First, he sent the full video from his hidden camera to Benjamin Bliss with a time-stamped email. "Emergency. Client needs immediate consultation. Child welfare concerns." Second, he forwarded the same video to Clayton Barton with instructions to document wherever Miranda went next. Third, he sent the video to his own encrypted cloud storage, with copies to 3 separate backup systems. Then Harvey Hawley climbed the stairs to comfort his daughter, his mind already 3 steps ahead, calculating the exact moves that would end this game once and for all. Miranda had played her hand. She'd shown him exactly who she was. Now it was his turn. Chapter 4. The War Room. Harvey spent Christmas Day doing damage control. Hope had cried herself into exhaustion, finally falling asleep, clutching her favorite stuffed penguin, a gift from Harvey's father, before Garrett had passed away 2 years ago. The old Marine would have appreciated the battle Harvey was about to wage. While Hope slept, Harvey worked. He'd transformed his home office into what his MIT friends would have called a war room. 3 monitors displayed different information streams. One tracking Miranda's location via the shared phone plan, GPS. One running facial recognition searches on Jerome Maxwell through publicly available databases. One compiling a timeline of every financial transaction Miranda had made in the past 18 months. At 2 p.m., Benjamin Bliss called. "I've seen a lot of terrible things in 20 years of family law," Benjamin said without preamble. "What your wife did this morning ranks in the top 5. I've already filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order in sole custody. We have a hearing scheduled for December 27th, day after tomorrow. Judge Patricia Mueller is presiding. What are our chances? With that video? Excellent. No judge wants to be the one who left a child in the care of someone who would weaponize Christmas to emotionally torture her own daughter. But Harvey, I need to know, is there anything else? Any skeletons in your closet Miranda could use?" Harvey had anticipated this question. "Nothing. I've never hit her. Never abused substances, never had an affair. My record is clean. My job is stable, stellar performance reviews. No disciplinary actions. I coach Hope's soccer team. I volunteer at her school. There's nothing there. What about her? Besides the affair and the financial fraud? I'm still gathering intelligence," Harvey said. "But I believe Jerome Maxwell, her lover, may have a history of violence. I'm working on confirming that. Work faster. The more ammunition we have going into that hearing, the better." After hanging up, Harvey made a decision that would have surprised the colleagues who thought of him as purely analytical. He called his sister. Alexis Ross had inherited their father's military bearing, but their mother's emotional intelligence. She was a criminal psychologist for the FBI, based in Quantico, and she understood the darkness humans were capable of in ways Harvey's equations could never capture. "Merry Christmas, little brother," Alexis answered. "Though from your tone, I'm guessing it's not very merry." Harvey explained everything. The affair, the money, the Christmas morning incident. Alexis listened without interrupting, her breathing the only sound on the line. When he finished, there was a long silence. "Harvey, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Alexis finally said. "What Miranda did wasn't just cruel. It was calculated psychological abuse. She deliberately chose the moment of maximum impact, Christmas morning, Santa, in front of you, but framed to make it seem like your fault. That's not someone acting on impulse. That's someone executing a plan." "I know," Harvey said. "She was recording it. She wanted evidence of Hope's breakdown to use against me somehow. Which means she's thought this through. Which means she has a strategy, probably with legal advice. Harvey, you need to consider the possibility that Miranda isn't just having an affair and stealing money. She's building a case to destroy you. Why? Think about it. She's drained your accounts, taken out fraudulent loans, has been systematically lying for over a year. If you divorced normally, the forensic accountants would find all of it. She'd be liable for fraud, possibly face criminal charges. But if she could paint you as abusive, unstable, unfit, if she could get a judge to believe you were the problem, then suddenly she's the victim. The financial irregularities become evidence that she was preparing to escape an abusive situation." Harvey felt the pieces clicking into place. "She's not just leaving me. She's trying to preemptively destroy my credibility." Exactly. And the Christmas video was supposed to be part of that. She'd edit it, make it look like you drove Hope to hysterics, frame it as your fault. It backfired because she didn't know about your cameras. But Harvey, this means she's dangerous. People who plan this methodically don't stop when plan A fails. They move to plan B. "So, what do I do?" "Document everything. Trust no one." "And Harvey?" Alexis's voice softened. "You need to prepare for this to get worse before it gets better. People like Miranda, when they're cornered, they escalate. Protect Hope. Protect yourself. And for God's sake, stay 3 steps ahead." After they hung up, Harvey sat in the darkness of his office, thinking, Alexis was right. Miranda wasn't just an unfaithful wife. She was playing a long game, and Harvey had only just discovered he was a piece on the board. But Miranda had made a fatal error. She'd assumed Harvey was a passive player, someone who would react rather than strategize. She'd assumed his analytical nature made him weak. She was about to learn how wrong she was. At 7 p.m., Clayton Barton sent an update. Miranda had gone directly to Jerome's apartment and hadn't left. Clayton had photographs of them arguing on the fire escape. Jerome's body language aggressive, Miranda's defensive. Harvey studied the photos with clinical detachment. Then he drafted an email to Benjamin, laying out a strategy that would have made his father proud. If Miranda wanted war, Harvey would give her war. But it would be fought on his terms, with his weapons, on terrain of his choosing. The first battle would be in Judge Mueller's courtroom in 36 hours. And Harvey Hawley didn't lose battles. Chapter 5. The Hearing. The courtroom was smaller than Harvey had expected, more like a conference room than the dramatic spaces from television. Judge Patricia Mueller presided from behind a simple desk, her gray hair pulled back severely, her expression neutral as she reviewed the emergency motion before her. Miranda sat across the aisle with her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Carol Roberts who specialized in representing wives in high-asset divorces. Carol had a reputation for aggressive tactics and winning settlements that left husbands financially devastated. Harvey had done his research. Carol Roberts won 73% of her cases, usually through intimidation and character assassination. She would come after him hard. "Mr. Bliss," Judge Mueller began, "you filed an emergency motion for temporary sole custody and a restraining order. That's a serious request. Walk me through your reasoning." Benjamin stood, projecting calm authority. "Your Honor, I'd like to begin by showing you a video from Christmas morning, recorded by the respondent herself." He played it on the courtroom screen. Harvey watched Miranda's face as her own voice filled the room. "Santa's not coming because you're the reason Daddy and I are getting divorced. This is your fault." Hope's sobs echoed through the courtroom. Harvey saw Judge Mueller's expression harden. When the video ended, there was silence. "Your Honor," Benjamin continued, "this wasn't a moment of poor judgment. This was calculated psychological abuse of a 6-year-old child. Mrs. Hawley deliberately chose Christmas morning to tell her daughter that she was responsible for destroying their family. She recorded it, and the evidence suggests this was part of a larger pattern of behavior designed to alienate the child from my client." Carol Roberts stood smoothly. "Your Honor, what we're seeing is a brief moment taken completely out of context. My client was under enormous stress from months of emotional abuse by Mr. Hawley. Yes, her words were poorly chosen, but they came from a place of genuine anguish over." "Counselor," Judge Mueller interrupted, her voice like ice. "I've been on the bench for 17 years. I've seen desperate mothers, abused women, people at their breaking point. What I just watched wasn't desperation. It was cruelty. With a camera running." Carol's jaw tightened. "Your Honor, if we could present our evidence of Mr. Hawley's controlling behavior, you'll have your opportunity." "Mr. Bliss, is there additional evidence?" Benjamin presented it systematically. The burner phone with explicit messages about Harvey being too boring to notice. The financial fraud documentation showing Miranda's systematic draining of accounts. The forged signature on the home equity line. Clayton's photographs of Miranda with Jerome. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow. Harvey watched Miranda's composure crack, watched Carol Roberts frantically taking notes, already trying to construct a defense. "Your Honor," Carol said when it was her turn, "my client admits to having a relationship with Mr. Maxwell during a period when her marriage was already effectively over. As for the finances, Mrs. Hawley believed she had the right to access marital funds to secure her future given Mr. Hawley's controlling behavior around money." "The forged signature?" Judge Mueller asked pointedly. "A misunderstanding. She believed her husband had given verbal consent." "That's a crime, counselor. That's fraud. Don't insult my intelligence by calling it a misunderstanding." Carol changed tactics. "Your Honor, what about Mr. Hawley's behavior? Installing hidden cameras throughout the home without his wife's knowledge? That's a massive invasion of privacy. Who knows what else he's been monitoring, controlling?" "The cameras were installed in common areas with audio disabled, fully compliant with Massachusetts law," Benjamin countered. "Mr. Hawley installed them after suspecting infidelity, which this evidence confirms. And those cameras are the only reason we have proof of Mrs. Hawley's Christmas morning abuse." Judge Mueller held up a hand. "I've heard enough. Here's my ruling." The courtroom went silent. "Mrs. Hawley, what you did on Christmas morning was unconscionable. No matter the state of your marriage, No matter what grievances you have with your husband, you do not weaponize a child's belief in Santa Claus to inflict emotional pain. The fact that you recorded it suggests premeditation, which makes it even worse. Miranda's face was pale. I'm granting the temporary restraining order. Mrs. Hawley, you are to have no contact with your daughter except supervised visits. 2 hours per week, supervised by a court-appointed monitor. You are not to come within 500 feet of the family home. Your Honor, please, Carol began. I'm not finished. As for custody, Mr. Hawley is granted temporary sole physical and legal custody pending a full hearing. We'll schedule that for January 15th. That gives both parties time to gather evidence for their claims. Judge Mueller fixed Miranda with a hard stare. Mrs. Hawley, I'm also ordering you to undergo a psychological evaluation before the next hearing. And I'm referring the matter of the forged home equity signature to the district attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges. Harvey kept his expression neutral, but inside, he felt the first piece of his strategy click into place. Perfect. This hearing is adjourned, Judge Mueller said, her gavel falling with finality. In the hallway afterward, Miranda cornered Harvey while their attorneys were filing paperwork. You bastard, she hissed, her mask of composure completely gone. You think you've won? You have no idea what's coming. I know exactly what's coming, Harvey said calmly. You're going to try to destroy me however you can. You'll lie, manipulate, maybe even escalate to false accusations. You're desperate now, and desperate people make mistakes. I gave you 8 years of my life. You gave me 8 years of lies. There's a difference. Harvey leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. Here's what's going to happen. Miranda, you're going to lose. You're going to lose custody. You're going to lose financially. And if I have my way, you're going to face criminal charges for fraud. Because I'm not the boring, oblivious man you thought I was. I'm the man who sees patterns, who solves problems, who plans ahead. Jerome will. Jerome is a broke personal trainer with a violent history who's been using you for money. You think he'll stick around when the money stops? When you're facing legal consequences? Harvey's smile was cold. You chose your allies poorly. He walked away, leaving Miranda trembling with rage in the courthouse hallway. Outside, Benjamin caught up to him. That went better than I expected. Mueller hates parental alienation cases. She's got grandkids. But Harvey, Carol Roberts is going to come back harder. She'll dig into every aspect of your life, looking for anything to use against you. Let her dig, Harvey said. There's nothing to find. What Harvey didn't say was that he was already planning the next phase. Judge Mueller's ruling had given him temporary safety, but the January 15th hearing would be the real battle. And, between now and then, Harvey needed to ensure Miranda's position became completely untenable. He had 17 days. It would be enough. Chapter 6. The Escalation. On New Year's Eve, Miranda made her next move. Harvey was at home with Hope, who was finally starting to smile again after the trauma of Christmas. They were building a blanket fort in the living room, Hope's laughter filling the brownstone when Harvey's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number, a photo of him at the grocery store that morning, taken from a distance. No message, just the photo. Harvey's blood ran cold. Someone was watching him. He immediately called Clayton. I need counter-surveillance. Now. Clayton arrived within an hour, sweeping the brownstone for bugs, checking Harvey's car, analyzing the photo. This was taken from about 50 yards away, telephoto lens, professional-grade equipment. Someone's tailing you. Miranda? More likely Jerome, or someone they hired. Clayton's expression was grim. This is intimidation. They want you looking over your shoulder, making mistakes. Harvey had expected escalation, but not this quickly. He called Benjamin. File for a restraining order expansion, Harvey instructed. Include Jerome Maxwell. I want documentation that we warn them off before this gets worse. But it was already getting worse. On January 2nd, Harvey's boss at North Star Dynamics, Martin Copeland, called him into his office. Harvey, we need to talk about some allegations we've received. Harvey's instincts prickled. What allegations? Martin looked uncomfortable. We received an anonymous tip that you've been using company resources for personal matters. Specifically, using our computers to hack into your wife's email accounts, using company time to build surveillance systems for your home. Harvey's mind raced. None of it was true. He'd been meticulous about separating work and personal. But someone had planted this seed, trying to get him fired. Martin, I can prove every one of those claims is false. My work laptop logs, my timesheets, everything is documented. I believe you, Martin said, holding up a hand. But HR requires an investigation. You're being placed on paid administrative leave pending review. I'm sorry, Harvey. My hands are tied. Harvey walked out of North Star knowing exactly what had happened. Miranda or Jerome had called in a false report, trying to destroy his professional reputation. It was clever. Even if the investigation cleared him, the taint would remain. But they'd made a mistake. The false accusation gave Harvey ammunition. That night, Harvey received a visitor, Alexis, who'd driven up from Quantico. You sounded stressed on the phone, she said, hugging her brother. Figured you could use backup. Over coffee, Harvey laid out everything that had happened since the hearing. The surveillance photo, the false workplace accusations, Miranda's increasingly erratic behavior, according to Clayton's reports. She's spiraling, Alexis said. This is what I warned you about. She thought she had control, thought she was executing a perfect plan. Now it's falling apart, and she's lashing out. How do I stop it? Alexis was quiet for a long moment. You need to give her a way out, that she thinks she controls. Right now, she's fighting because she thinks she can still win. You need to show her she can't, but do it in a way that makes her choose surrender over escalation. I'm listening. The financial fraud is your biggest weapon. She forged your signature, stole over $200,000. That's serious prison time if prosecuted. But you could offer a deal. She gives up all custody claims, agrees to an unfavorable financial settlement, and in exchange, you don't push for criminal prosecution. She'd never accept that. She will if the alternative is worse. Alexis leaned forward. But first, you need to make the alternative absolutely clear. You need to show her that fighting you means losing everything: her freedom, her reputation, any hope of seeing hope. Only then will she consider surrender. Harvey understood. His sister wasn't just offering strategy. She was offering psychological warfare. How do I do that? You build an unshakable case. Every interaction documented. Every lie exposed. Every ally she has. You isolate or turn. And when she's completely alone, completely exposed, you offer her the deal. She'll take it because she'll have no other choice. It was ruthless. It was exactly what Harvey needed. Over the next week, Harvey executed the plan with surgical precision. He hired a forensic accountant named Todd Riley, who traced every dollar Miranda had moved, building an airtight case of financial fraud. He worked with Benjamin to compile every text message, every email, every piece of evidence showing Miranda's manipulation and lies. He had Clayton document Jerome's increasingly violent behavior. The personal trainer had been photographed, shoving Miranda during an argument outside a bar, giving Harvey grounds to paint him as dangerous. Most critically, Harvey reached out to Miranda's family. Miranda's mother, Carol Roberts, no relation to Miranda's attorney, lived in Connecticut. She'd always been cold toward Harvey, believing her daughter had married beneath her. But Harvey knew something Miranda didn't. Her mother valued reputation above everything. Harvey sent her the Christmas video. 20 minutes later, Carol called, her voice shaking with rage. Is this real? Every second of it, Harvey said. Your daughter told her own child that she destroyed the family. On Christmas morning, while recording it, silence. Then, Miranda has always been difficult. But this, Mrs. Roberts, I'm calling because Hope is your granddaughter too. Whatever happens between Miranda and me, Hope deserves family who will protect her. I want you to know what Miranda is capable of. And I want you to understand that I will fight with everything I have to keep Hope safe. It was a calculated move, positioning himself as the reasonable one, the protective father, while letting Miranda's own actions speak for themselves. The call ended with Carol promising to think about what you've said. 2 days later, Miranda's mother called Miranda and told her she was cutting her off financially. No more help with legal fees. No more support. Clayton reported that Miranda and Jerome had a screaming fight that night, Jerome storming out and not returning for 2 days. Miranda's support system was collapsing. On January 12, 3 days before the custody hearing, Harvey received a call from Carol Roberts, Miranda's attorney. My client would like to discuss a settlement, Carol said, her earlier aggressiveness replaced by weariness. I'm listening, Harvey said. Mrs. Hawley is willing to accept supervised visitation, reduced parenting time, and a 60-40 asset split in your favor. In exchange, you agree not to pursue criminal charges for the financial matters. Harvey had expected a lowball offer. This was better than he'd hoped. Not good enough, he said calmly. Here are my terms. I get sole legal and physical custody. Miranda gets supervised visits, 4 hours per month, pending successful completion of parenting classes and therapy. Asset split is 80-20 inches my favor to compensate for the money she stole and the equity line fraud. She pays my legal fees. And she signs an affidavit admitting to the affair, the financial fraud, and the Christmas incident, to be used if she ever tries to modify custody in the future. That's completely one-sided. The alternative is I press charges. Your client forged my signature on a $120,000 loan. That's 5 to 10 years in prison. She drained our accounts. She emotionally abused our daughter on camera. I have evidence of all of it. So yes, my offer is one-sided. Because I hold all the cards. Silence on the line. I'll present it to my client, Carol finally said. Harvey knew Miranda would reject it. She still thought she could win, still thought she could fight her way out. But he'd set the trap. And in 3 days, it would spring shut. Chapter 7. The Final Hearing. The custody hearing on January 15th was held in the same courtroom. But the atmosphere was different. This wasn't an emergency motion, but a full evidentiary hearing. Judge Mueller had allocated 3 hours. Harvey sat beside Benjamin, his evidence organized in perfect chronological order. Across the aisle, Miranda looked haggard, the weeks of stress showing in her face, her movements jerky and nervous. Jerome wasn't in attendance. Clayton's intelligence suggested they'd had another fight, this one possibly permanent. Carol Roberts stood and began her presentation. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that she made serious errors in judgment. The Christmas incident was indefensible, and Mrs. Hawley has been attending therapy to address her behavior. However, we believe Mr. Hawley has presented a one-sided narrative that paints him as a perfect father and my client as a monster. The truth is more nuanced. She presented character witnesses, Miranda's former co-workers who described her as dedicated and caring, her therapist who testified she was making progress, a parenting expert who argued that one incident, however terrible, shouldn't define someone's entire fitness as a mother. It was competent, almost persuasive. If Harvey hadn't had his counter-evidence, it might have worked. Then it was Benjamin's turn. He called Todd Riley, the forensic accountant, who walked through every fraudulent transaction with clinical precision, $207,000 stolen over 14 months. Forged signatures, hidden accounts. He called Clayton Barden, who testified about Jerome Maxwell's violent history and presented photographs of Jerome physically intimidating Miranda, evidence that she'd been bringing a dangerous person into her life while claiming to have Hope's best interests at heart. He presented phone records showing Miranda had been lying about her whereabouts for over a year, creating elaborate cover stories while she was with her lover. Most devastatingly, he called Dr. Andrea Dennis, a child psychologist who'd evaluated Hope over the past 2 weeks. Hope is suffering from acute anxiety and trust issues directly traceable to the Christmas incident, Dr. Dennis testified. She told me she's afraid to be happy because happiness might be taken away. She's afraid to trust her mother because, in her words, Mommy said I broke our family. This child has been psychologically traumatized. Harvey watched Miranda flinch at each detail, watched her attorney frantically scribbling notes, trying to find weaknesses in the testimony. There were none. Harvey had been thorough. When it was Miranda's turn to testify, Carol tried to rehabilitate her image. Miranda spoke about being a loving mother, about how the Christmas incident was an aberration born of emotional distress, about how she wanted to repair her relationship with Hope. Then Benjamin cross-examined her. Mrs. Hawley, when did your relationship with Jerome Maxwell begin? Last February, Miranda admitted quietly. And when did you start moving money into secret accounts? Around the same time. So your affair and your financial fraud began simultaneously. Is that a coincidence? We've been having problems. I needed to protect myself. By forging your husband's signature? By lying to credit institutions? By stealing from your marital assets? Benjamin's voice was sharp. You weren't protecting yourself, Mrs. Hawley. You were planning to leave your husband destitute while you started a new life with your lover. That's not. You told your daughter on Christmas morning that she was responsible for your divorce. Why? Miranda's composure cracked. I was angry. Harvey had just confronted me about Jerome, and I. So you took your anger at your husband out on your 6-year-old daughter. You told her Santa wouldn't come because she destroyed your family. While recording it, I made a mistake. A mistake suggests an accident. You planned this. You positioned your phone, you chose your words carefully, and you broke your daughter's heart deliberately. Didn't you? Miranda was crying now, mascara running. I didn't mean to hurt her. But you did hurt her. Severely. Dr. Dennis testified that Hope suffers from anxiety and trust issues directly caused by your actions. Do you dispute that? No, Miranda whispered. Judge Mueller called a 15-minute recess. Harvey watched Miranda collapse into her attorney's arms, sobbing. When they reconvened, Judge Mueller had clearly made her decision. I've presided over hundreds of custody cases, she began. Most of them involve good people in bad situations, trying to navigate divorce while minimizing harm to their children. This is not one of those cases. She fixed Miranda with a hard stare. Mrs. Hawley, what you did on Christmas morning was one of the cruelest acts of parental manipulation I've encountered in my career. You didn't just make a mistake in anger. You planned it, executed it, and recorded it. You weaponized your daughter's innocence to hurt your husband, with no regard for the psychological damage you were inflicting on a child. Miranda was openly weeping. Furthermore, the financial fraud is extensive and premeditated. You didn't just take money, you forged documents, lied to institutions, and stole over $200,000 from your family. That demonstrates a pattern of deception and self-interest that makes me question your judgment in every aspect of parenting. Judge Mueller turned to Harvey. Mr. Hawley, by contrast, has demonstrated stability, thoughtfulness, and genuine concern for his daughter's welfare. He's been the primary caretaker in many ways. He has a stable job, a clean record, and has done everything possible to protect his daughter during this process. She looked at her notes. Here's my ruling. Mr. Hawley is granted sole legal and physical custody of Hope Hawley. Mrs. Hawley is granted supervised visitation, 4 hours per month, with the possibility of increased time after 6 months of demonstrated stability and successful completion of parenting classes and therapy. Miranda gasped, but Judge Mueller continued. Asset division will be 7-5, 25 inches Mr. Hawley's favor to account for the financial fraud. Mrs. Hawley will be responsible for her own legal fees. And I'm recommending to the district attorney that criminal charges be pursued for the signature forgery on the home equity line. She closed her folder. This marriage is dissolved. I hope, Mrs. Hawley, that you use this time to reflect on your choices and their consequences. And I hope you eventually repair your relationship with your daughter, though you've made that road incredibly difficult. The gavel fell. Harvey felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was over. In the hallway, Miranda tried to approach him, but Carol held her back. Don't, the attorney warned. You've already made enough mistakes. Harvey walked out of the courthouse with Benjamin, into the cold January air. Congratulations, Benjamin said. You won everything you wanted. No, Harvey corrected quietly. I won what I needed to protect my daughter. Miranda lost everything she deserved to lose. There was a difference. Chapter 8. The Aftermath. 2 weeks later, the pieces of Miranda's collapse were evident to everyone. Jerome Maxwell had indeed left her, draining the last of the money she'd stolen before disappearing. Miranda was living in a studio apartment in Somerville, working a retail job to pay her bills. Her mother had cut her off completely after learning the full extent of her behavior. The district attorney's office had filed charges for the forged home equity signature. Miranda's trial was scheduled for March. Harvey, meanwhile, had settled back into a routine with Hope. He'd been reinstated at work after the investigation cleared him completely. The false accusations had actually backfired, making his employers sympathetic and leading to a promotion when his dedication became clear. Hope was in therapy, slowly healing. She still had nightmares sometimes, still asked questions about why Mommy had been so mean. But Dr. Dennis was optimistic about her recovery. On a Saturday in early February, Harvey took Hope to the park. She ran ahead to the playground. her laughter bright and genuine, the first time he'd heard her truly carefree since before Christmas. His phone buzzed. A text from Miranda. "Can we talk? Please?" Harvey considered ignoring it. But curiosity won. They met at a coffee shop in Cambridge, Miranda arriving 10 minutes late, looking exhausted. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. Harvey just nodded, waiting. "I wanted to apologize. To you, to Hope, for everything." Miranda's hands shook as she held her coffee cup. "I've been in therapy, working through a lot, and I'm starting to understand how badly I screwed up." "Understanding isn't the same as fixing," Harvey said. "Hope still has nightmares. She still asks me if she's the reason we're not together." "I know. And I know there's nothing I can say to make it better. But I wanted you to know that I'm not fighting anymore. I'm accepting the custody arrangement. I'm going to prove I can be a better person, a better mother, even if it takes years." Harvey studied her, looking for manipulation, for deception. He found only exhaustion and something that might have been genuine remorse. "Why Jerome?" he asked. "Of all the ways to blow up our marriage, why him?" Miranda laughed bitterly. "Because I'm an idiot. Because he made me feel young and exciting, and I was so bored with being responsible. Because I convinced myself I deserved more than what I had." She met his eyes. "I threw away a good man and a beautiful daughter for someone who only wanted my money. I know there's no coming back from that." "No," Harvey agreed. "There isn't. Are you going to push for the criminal charges?" This was the moment Harvey had been thinking about for weeks. The DA's case was strong. Miranda would likely be convicted, serve at least 2 years. She'd have a felony record, making employment nearly impossible afterward. It would be justice. It would be deserved. It would also mean Hope's mother in prison during her formative years. "I'm going to tell the DA I support a plea deal," Harvey said finally. "Probation, restitution, community service. You'll have a record, but no prison time. On one condition, anything. You never, ever try to manipulate Hope again. No using her as a weapon. No poisoning her against me. You accept your 4 hours a month. You do your therapy, and you earn back her trust the right way. 1 month at a time. 1 supervised visit at a time. Until maybe you've proven you can be the mother she deserves." Miranda's eyes filled with tears. "I promise. Promises don't mean much from you anymore. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because Hope asked me yesterday if Mommy would ever love her again. And I told her yes. Don't make me a liar." He stood to leave. "Harvey," Miranda's voice was small. "You were always too good for me. I hope you know that." "I know I'm good enough for my daughter," Harvey said. "That's all that matters now." He walked out, leaving Miranda at the table, and drove back to the park where Hope was waiting. Chapter 9. New Beginnings. 6 months later, Harvey stood in the kitchen of the brownstone, making pancakes on a Saturday morning. Hope sat at the counter, chattering about her upcoming dance recital, about her new best friend at school, about whether they could get a dog. The house felt different now, lighter, somehow. Harvey had redecorated, removing the last traces of Miranda's presence, making it truly his and Hope's space. Photos of Garrett Carlson, Hope's grandfather, now hung in the hallway. The old Marine's stern, but loving face watching over them. Alexis visited monthly, her FBI schedule permitting. She'd become Hope's favorite aunt, teaching her about forensics and crime scene investigation in age-appropriate ways that made the little girl feel like a detective. Miranda's supervised visits had been adequate. Not warm, not especially maternal, but adequate. She showed up on time, brought appropriate activities, and never said anything inappropriate. It was the bare minimum, but it was progress. The criminal case had resolved with a plea deal, as Harvey had arranged 3 years probation, full restitution of the stolen money, 500 hours of community service. Miranda had avoided prison, but would be paying back what she'd stolen for the next decade. Jerome Maxwell, it turned out, had fled to Florida with what remained of Miranda's money and gotten arrested 3 months later for assault. He was currently serving 18 months in a correctional facility in Tampa. Miranda had dodged a bullet there, however painful the lesson. But all of that was background noise to Harvey now. His focus was on the little girl eating pancakes and planning her future with the boundless optimism of childhood restored. "Daddy," Hope asked, "can Grandma Alexis come to my recital?" She already said she wouldn't miss it, Harvey assured her. And will mommy come? This question still came sometimes, usually without warning. Harvey had learned to navigate it carefully. That's not her day to visit, sweetie. But I'll record it for her if you want. Hope considered this. Okay, but mostly I want you there. And Aunt Alexis, and maybe someday, a dog? Harvey laughed. We'll see about the dog. His phone buzzed a message from work. He'd been promoted again, now leading the entire satellite navigation division. The false accusations had ultimately highlighted his value when they'd been disproven, and Northstar had committed to making sure he knew he was appreciated. But more importantly, the new schedule gave him more time with Hope. He negotiated to work from home 3 days a week, a flexibility his old position hadn't offered. Everything Miranda had tried to destroy, Harvey had rebuilt stronger. That afternoon, he and Hope went to the cemetery where Garrett Carlson was buried. They brought flowers, as they did every month. Hi, Grandpa, Hope said to the headstone. I got an A on my science project. Daddy helped me build a volcano. It was awesome. Harvey stood back, letting his daughter talk to the grandfather she'd barely known, but whose legacy lived on in both of them. Garrett had taught Harvey discipline, strategy, the importance of thinking 3 moves ahead. Those lessons had saved him. As they walked back to the car, Hope slipped her small hand into his. Daddy, I'm glad it's just us now. Is that bad? Harvey stopped, kneeling to her eye level. It's not bad, sweetheart. It's honest. And sometimes just us is exactly right. Will you always be here? Always, Harvey promised. That's what dads do. They drove home through the spring sunshine, Hope singing along to the radio, Harvey mentally planning the evening homework, dinner, maybe a movie. It was simple. It was routine. It was everything he'd fought for. That night, after Hope was asleep, Harvey sat in his office and opened a locked drawer. Inside was a folder containing every piece of evidence from the divorce. The videos, the financial documents, the surveillance photos. He kept it all. Insurance against Miranda ever trying to relitigate custody. But tonight, looking at it, Harvey realized he didn't need it anymore. Miranda had lost. Not because Harvey had destroyed her, though he could have. She'd lost because she destroyed herself. Her greed, her cruelty, her short-sighted manipulation had all collapsed under their own weight. Harvey had simply been smart enough to get out of the way and let it happen. He closed the folder and locked it away. Tomorrow was Sunday. Hope had soccer practice, which Harvey coached. Afterward, they'd get ice cream, their weekend tradition. Simple pleasures, simple moments. Miranda had tried to take everything from him. His money, his reputation, his daughter, his peace. Instead, Harvey Hawley had taken everything that mattered and built a life from it. A life he'd fought for. A life he'd earned.